Caddis Maximus here. This time I'm reviewing the new, now even stronger Master Lock number 5, sold as the 5D. Master Lock recently, in the last couple of years, has upgraded their standard laminated steel padlocks. They've actually upgraded them a couple times in the last 5 or 10 years from what was the standard number 5 or standard laminated steel padlock that has been around for decades, literally decades, and they finally decided to upgrade these. I'm not a picking person, but unfortunately in any of these upgrades they haven't put any kind of like security pins or anything in them, which is still disappointing considering that at a good price these are still about $10 for the number 5, and it has a 5/8 shackle in it. And the new upgrade is a ball bearing locking mechanism. So is from what they used to be, now get that key out of there, they have actual ball bearings, and they actually put a lot of grease in there, and I really appreciate that. And you can see inside there, let me tap the ball down. If it'll cooperate, we can see that it now is ball bearing locking. So that does improve the pull out and overall physical durability of the lock, because the ball bearing is a captured ball. There's a little cam inside that pushes the balls into those round cutouts in the shackle and secures it quite well. And I wanted to do a quick review of this because I've been wanting to look inside these new ones just to see if they even attempted to put any security pins into it. Now, how the ball bearing mechanism works, actually I'll show that in a second. We have the next upgraded one where they had done the core shield and the recessed rivets, but it still had their traditional square cutout and kind of sheet metal or stamped steel pawls. So it was lightly upgraded, but there wasn't much of a difference between it. This is basically a Master Lock commercial, and that was the upgrade from what has been the traditional one, which has had a standard exposed core and no recessed rivets, and of course square pawls. Let me go and get one of those commercials so you can see. Here we go. This will be the proper progression of these locks. Would be the original ones, and they had the commercial series, and the only difference with the commercial series was it was exactly the same as the traditional one, but they added that key limiter. You know, they kind of call it an anti-drill, anti-slide hammer core protection. And then what they did with the next upgrade is it still had the same square pawls, but they integrated that same core protection and then recessed the rivets to make it harder to chisel out the rivets, because of course they're sunk slightly into the sheet metal, the bottom layer, and as well as the top layer, so you can't get a chisel right under the edge of the rivet. What's kind of odd is that's one of the least likely physical attacks to go after. When a padlock is hanging off of something, trying to get a chisel on the 8 hardened steel rivets and actually knock them off is extremely difficult. There is no YouTube videos of somebody chiseling off the rivets of an old Master Lock while it's actually hanging off of a hasp or a chain. If this thing's hanging off a chain, it's effectively impossible to do that. You have to hit these pretty darn hard with the lock in a vise to be able to get the rivets chiseled off. So even though it's a nice upgrade, it was didn't really make that much of a difference. Really, it was just to make the lock look a little different. Now, a lot of people talk about shimming these Master Locks. They're not as easy to shim as they were before. Inside, if we take a look at any one of these, take a look at this one, we can see that the little locking pawl in there has a couple notches in it. So if somebody were to take some kind of piece of sheet metal, it will get caught kind of in that notch. Sometimes people can do it, but a lot of times it just doesn't work out, and that's what the intention of those notches are, is to prevent somebody from using what is known as a shim attack. And then this is what the pawl is. It just has 2 notches, and those 2 wider fingers you just don't see because they're hidden within the lock body itself. They've been doing that ever since the really old ones like this. It's still, as we can see, there we go. They've had those anti-shim notches for quite some time. It's just a shame because Master Lock charges so much money for these locks. $10 for what is, you know, physically a decent lock, but no security pins. Just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. I mean, really, charge $11. And it's always been a bit of a disappointment. And the reason is these are the most common locks sold in the United States, by far, is Master Lock brand and their laminated padlocks. It's just crazy. Everywhere you go, if they ever have any padlocks, it's a Master Lock laminated padlock. Wherever, I mean, anywhere from any home improvement store down to like an Albertsons grocery store or something like that. They have a tiny hardware section. They have like they have one padlock that they sell and happens to be a Master Lock. It is just crazy. So many of these things end up everywhere, and it's just it doesn't make it easy to get a hold of any of their nicer series of locks. So people are kind of stuck with locks which are physically pretty durable, but there are all these YouTube videos of how easy they are to pick. Now, the thing with the ball bearing locking mechanism over the straight pawl version is not that the pawls aren't strong enough, it's the fact that you have that square-edged cutout, so it adds what's known as a stress riser, and when people are hammering or doing severe pry attacks or twisting, that it wants to break right there because there's that corner which concentrates all the force. And that's really the biggest deal about the ball bearing, besides the fact that the ball bearings are captured. Where on these, there's some YouTube videos of people doing what's called wrapping or using hammers to hit these locks back and forth to get those spring-loaded pawls to kind of shift back in, and the lock will eventually pop open. Where on a ball bearing lock, the cam physically blocks those balls from retracting, so not only can it not be shimmed, you can hammer on this thing until it falls apart and it will never pop open. Now, that isn't exactly true, and the real reason that this is an issue is because this will have cast zinc internals. I'm sure of it. All these laminated padlocks here all have cast zinc internals. The only thing about these square edge ones is if you hit them with a torch, a big-time YouTuber, Crazy Russian Hacker, melted one down with a torch, and he was pretty proud of the video, and how the lock didn't unlock, and that's just because it has square edges in there, and those square pawls, don't retract when you melt out the internals. And usually when you melt it out, the zinc kind of blocks everything up, so they really just they'll never open. But in one sense, they're actually a little better that way, where if you hit this with a torch and you melt the zinc out, you've melted what is actually holding the ball bearings in place, and then it usually just falls off. And their Lockpicking Lawyer, a variety of YouTubers have shown that. Another problem with the cast zinc internals is cast zinc, even though it is a decent metal for using something like a ball cam, it is brittle. So under repeated heavy hammering, the zinc will get compressed and will crack and kind of break apart, and allowing the lock to release. There's an additional YouTube video which is padlocks and irons. It has about 150,000 views, and it's a firefighting training video. They use bars known as haligans. So when firefighters are trying to gain entry somewhere, there's a fire at a factory and they can't get through the gate or something because there's a padlock, they use sledgehammers and various types of hammering axes and what's known as a haligan to get into the padlocks and pound them off. They tested a variety of Master Lock Magnum series, and all of them except for the super heavy duty, this specific super heavy duty lock, was the only one that actually put up a real fight. All the others, they had some huge ones. These are the number 5s are 3/8 shackled, then they have 7/16 shackles. And all of those all ended up failing, being hit repeated, a few times with the haligan, even while they're on a chain, because those new Master Locks, the Magnum series, these guys right here also use this is a cast zinc exterior body, and then they have a cast zinc ball bearing actuator. So even though these are ball bearing, it's the same situation where under just a few hits, you just see that the padlock, the whole shackle and everything just falls out of the padlock, indicating that the internals are failing, not the shackle or the lock body, which is incredibly disappointing. This will suffer the same fate. Even though it does offer some increased pulling resistance over these, I'm sure if it was put into a test rig, it wouldn't be much. And this is going to be kind of a long video. There just isn't any video on YouTube that kind of goes over this kind of stuff. Not just reviewing this lock, but kind of talking about these various aspects. It's amazing. There's a couple of really huge lock YouTubers, and there are some large subject areas I really wish they would touch on, and they've seemed to have kind of neglected. One of the other areas is that Master Lock, Abus, and Asa Abloy, Kryptonite, Schlage padlocks, a lot of these different brands. It appears that it's Abus and Master Lock, or who are physically manufacturing many of the lock bodies that people see all around the world. No joke. I have taken apart enough of those locks to know that all those brands are kind of in bed together when it comes to the physical lock manufacturing. Clean that stuff up. I did want to mention, so these new ball bearing ones, they come in the exact same packages as the slightly older ones. The only real difference is that they just have a sticker that says "now even stronger," and so that's how you know you're getting one of the ball bearing ones. And it's just kind of tough to bite off $10 for one of these locks when for $10 I'm sure you could probably find, maybe you can't because Master pretty much dominates everything, a better padlock. To tell you the truth, when you get an American lock that's equivalent size, it's like 25 or $30. So really, it's just expensive to make locks, apparently. But if Master would just spend another couple of dollars. Now, as far as being in bed together, there's a lot of lock parts that I've taken apart and been able to interchange, such as these Master Lock 532s. And to dispel any myths, anybody who may be familiar with these, on one of Bosnian Bill's videos he showed, but didn't talk about, and Lockpicking Lawyer just assumed it was aluminum. These cores in these solid steel 532s actually do have steel anti-drill pins. And how I know that, I've taken one apart non-destructively. As we can see, I customized one. This is also a 532 with a long shackle, but we can see this has a molybdenum shackle. They never made one of these with a molybdenum shackle. That's the shackle out of a Schlage KS43. The ball bearings are the same size. The actuator internally was the same size. And when I pulled this all apart, the actuator on the back as well as the cam looked exactly like a Series 1 Abus. So there's some confusion there and some information that's yet to be discovered. And by the way, I've talked about this. These are $14 at AutoZone. They stock them at AutoZone, these Master 532s. So for literally $4 over this lock, you can get a lock that is much higher security by leaps and bounds. It's real surprising. Not only is this also ball bearing, but the internal locking mechanism is brass. I've physically taken this one up, or this one I've taken apart. As we can see, I put a new steel pin in. And so they're brass, not zinc. You can blowtorch this until it's 1500 degrees and the brass still won't. Brass melts between 15 and 1600 degrees. Hardened steel body, 5-pin core, and they have spool security pins. These type of little security pins. Right here. The 532s have those kind of pins in them. So for $4 more, you get security pins, you get a 5-pin core, you get brass internals, you get a solid steel, hardened steel body with drill protection on the actual lock cylinder. So I'll put that out there as well. Anyway, to finish up this video, for $10, it's just hard to kind of bite off one of these Master Lock number 5s, where really, for $4 more, you get a lock. This lock is strong enough where you could use this lock to physically beat this lock into pieces and break it, and then still continue to use it, which is really surprising. It is a 40% retail price increase, but for 40% you get way more pick resistance, and you get at least twice as much physical durability and higher quality internal components. It's just kind of nonsensical. Anyway, if you did notice the bottom of this, I did grind it. The first 4 I had tried using a Dremel, and it was just a little too small. Those are hard rivets, so I just used a die grinder. I'm going to knock this apart so that people can see what's inside. Let me get cleaned up here. Now, there are standards in manufacturing. I did want to add, just before I did that part of the reason I'm grinding this is to prove another point. What I have here is a Master Lock Pro Series. I took the cover off. These are the covers that are on them. They work pretty well until these caps start getting worn, and then what goes from being a water seal ends up being a water and grit trap, and I don't like them, and it's pretty easy to take these apart. I just use a press and V-blocks to knock these covers off nice and easily, so I can potentially put it back on if I wanted to. But I kind of like the look of them bare like this. So part of the deal is this is a 6125. It also has a 3/8 shackle. And this is going to be not a as high a quality as shackle, but the point is that I'm going to take the shackle out of this lock and show that you can use it in this lock. This one did initially come with a boron alloy long shackle, but this is just to show lock part interchangeability. And even the Pro Series, they don't always come with brass actuators like this. I've taken apart a couple of them, and one of them actually had a cast zinc actuator, but it seems most of them have brass, but there's no real rhyme or reason to it, so you never really know what you're getting, even out of the Professional Series master locks. Alright, we're back here. And just to mention, I was using my Starrett S565 drive pin punch set, and just to show quality tools, even driving out all these rivets, and I've done this a few times, the tip of this tool looks almost brand new, just about perfect. And we've got just a little bit of mushrooming on the end. High quality tools really do show the difference in these type of situations. And it is real obvious the proper heat treatment, where it's super hard on the tip and a little bit softer on the hammering surface. Anyway, did drive out all these rivets nice and easily here, or not so easily. Even grinding them off, they're still swaged in that bottom piece of sheet metal, and you do have to drive them out. What I do notice is that there's rust on them, brand new. That's just from humidity during shipping, and they're already rusting. That's always one of the notorious issues with those sliding type pawls or traditional master locks, is once they rust, they are impossible to open. Where the ball bearing ones are a bit better, ball bearing locks in general are a bit better when they get corroded. So somehow, amazingly, I managed to actually get this thing apart without destroying all the layers. And I've been holding it in my hand, so now you get to see a master lock taken apart layer by layer. So the first layer here, and let me get this spring out of here because this is really what's messing me up. There we go. So there it is. It's really just the very bottom plate that's holding everything together and provides all the protection and core retention. They really rely. You think they do two plates at least to protect the core, but they don't. It's just one plate. And then at that point, we have a second layer, which is what this little plastic label is attached to. So there's layer number 2. We'll start off this way. We've got our rivets. We've got our spring. And we'll just go down through here layer by layer. And this is how these padlocks are built. So look at what's inside. A lot of people have seen these. There's a couple YouTube videos showing them taken apart, but not kind of... Now look at that. We got an awful lot of rust. You saw this padlock is like brand new. And there's a ton of rust. This has never seen a day outside, which is kind of disappointing. So it's getting a little bit more funky to take apart as I get through each of these layers here. So the deal with Master Lock is they actually founded their company in 1921 based on making stamped sheet metal locks, which offered much improved durability in the 1920s and 30s and 40s over what else was available, and be able to mass manufacture them at something resembling a reasonable cost. And that's how they do it. They just, have the planners, they make the stamping dies, and they can stamp out all these layers. The reason some of them, like these Pro Series, are more expensive is because they don't have as much cutout inside them. As we can see here, they have lots of guarding to hold the core right in place. All the layers on one of these, as you can see, all have to be maintained right side up or in the same direction. Where many of these here and through here, it doesn't matter whether they're right side up or upside down. That's why the layers kind of look like they're alternating. Almost lost the core there. We'll go and pull out the core. What's interesting is that there is now a steel shield over the core, and I don't really understand why that is. It still has the same cast zinc core, 4-pin, but oddly there is a little steel shield. That may be stainless steel, but we can see inside here, let me get that part out of the way, that the spring is riding around that shield, and so that's why they have the steel around the core, is so that the cast zinc won't get worn out by that clock spring. So let's go and continue these two layers are stuck. There we go. Lots of rust inside this lock. Very disappointed by that. And we'll just continue to pull these layers apart here. There's our clock spring and our lots of grease, but no lie, it is indeed a cast zinc actuator. This actuator appears to be entirely unique to this lock, probably to reduce manufacturing cost, to give them ball bearing capabilities. And see, the spring is just has a little tine and is just stamped into the end of that zinc actuator. We'll go ahead and pull off more of these layers here. There we go. Whoop, that goes there and there. There's a lot of rust in between these layers. That's really pretty disappointing. The sticker's giving me some trouble. Here we go. More layers. More layers. Quite a few layers inside this lock, actually. There's our two locking ball bearings, and that's what the cam does. The cam sits, there's the lock, here's the cam. It's sitting in between these two ball bearings. It's unlocked, and when it locks, this cam rotates, and let's see if it gives you a good view here. This cam rotates and pushes the locking balls into the cutouts on the shackle. So now the shackle can't be opened because the ball bearings have nowhere to go. And so when you unlock it, you're just rotating that. And when you pull the shackle, you can see how the ball bearings push in there and allows you to open the lock. This is being a little funky because I've got all the layers out. There's our... The other nice thing is the ball bearing, they use that flat and then it's fully round on the end. So the ball bearing ends up actually retaining the shackle. And how they achieve that is the actuator cam here is asymmetrical. One cutout slightly larger than the other. Get those balls out of here. This is kind of greasy. And we'll finish off with the layers. And then this is your very top layer right there. And they have, as we can see, 2 layers retaining the shackle. And that's the only other thing of concern. Actually, let me zoom out here. There's all the layers. These 2 layers are what's under, or where the ball bearings are hiding. They're riding under the bottom of this layer right here. We can see how this is cost effective because even though there's a whole bunch of layers, let me count them. There's 25 layers here. There's only 7 different types of plates. We have 2 different types of top plates. We have 5 different types of intermediary, 6 different types, or 6 of the same intermediary plates. We have a couple just like guide plates that are like in the middle of the lock, and then we have these kind of, I don't know what that shape is, but triple hole plates. That's what makes up most of the lock where the core and everything is held. And then they have 2 core alignment plates at the bottom, and then of course the bottom plate. So they're not all 25 plates, we only have 7 different styles. Let me get this cleaned up and I'll just show what's inside this little core here. I can say they put a whole ton of grease in there. And sorry about the long video, but I really want to go into all these details. I kind of, in past time, hunted around YouTube for some videos that did exactly this. Gave me a lot of detail about these laminated locks and then the new ones. And there's like no videos about the new ball bearing locking ones. And not really any that kind of methodically go through and explain how it works. So this little stainless steel shield slides right off. It's just a little collar. And then of course it's a traditional zinc core. We'll turn it this way and see. Oh, we're not going to be able to. It'll take me a second. I have to. They use these little cheesy crimps on each side, but they're both pretty deep, so I have to knock one of them out. Just a second. There we go. Knocked one of the little crimps out there. I'll rotate this way. I'm just going to let it fall apart. I just want to see what's inside. And so for $10, they still don't put any security pins in there. It just doesn't really make any sense to me. Charge another $1 and put some of those something in there. And then there's our little key pins. And a little brass core. So nice that they still use the brass core. Too bad everything else is zinc. Anyway, the real point of this, let me get some of this grease off of here, is that these shackles are interchangeable. They are basically the same size. And there we have it. We can put that into the Pro Series. So, anyway, that was kind of the end of this video, and just wanted to show how parts of locks are quite interchangeable. And so on locks where you can pull out the core, you can actually get multiple shackles and have something where you choose whether you want a long shackle or whether you want a long shackle or whether you want a short shackle. Anyway, sorry for another long video, but I've been wanting to make one about this master lock for a while. And I really appreciate everybody watching and subscribing. And if you haven't subscribed, please do subscribe to the Catus Maximus channel. Until next time, Catus Maximus.